spirituality in nursing, I would like to talk to you about spirituality. I hope you have read the introduction of this course, and I told you to have a perusal reading of that as a good introduction for you in this course. We said already that in this course we will use the book of O'Brien, Spirituality in Nursing, Standing on Holy Ground. As priest, I preach, I teach, of course, Catholic doctrines. You also, as Catholics, maybe some of you are not Catholics, but all of us are Christians. Protestants are Christians. So, we are going towards the holiness, towards God. This book of O'Brien is, as I have said also, is our guide to spirituality. And I am not biased or prejudiced to O'Brien because she is not priest. However, personally, she did well as a lay person talking about spirituality. Although I may say that when it comes to finality, we are different because she is a laity and I am priest. I can talk as she can talk also. However, the finality means that as a priest, I have the sacraments as our assurance to salvation, to arrive to God. She did well in her book, telling us, guiding us, that spirituality is a calling from God. Gave Moses as an example, called by God to him to guide his people to the promised land. And also there are so many other persons called by God, like the prophets. They were called by God to him to do something. So, like Prophet Jeremiah, he was called by God at a very young age of 20. He had his struggles. He is dubbed as the prototype of Christ. He had his soliloquy talking to himself about his struggles. However, in the end, he submitted to the will of God. Like Christ also, who submitted himself to the will of God. However, before that, he said that God is only good in why is he called to save us? But God is not as if not concerned with the how He will do it. He will do it through the cross, passion, death. On the cross, however, there is this resurrection. So, Moses, Jeremiah, Christ, some few examples, but there are so many whom God called to do something. Saint Paul was also called. When he fell from his horse, he became blind and got cured. And he did well with his vocation, with his calling. So, yeah, we have this calling coming from God. Does not mean that only these people are called to spirituality, called by God to Him. However, our course will tell us that not only the prophets, not only Jesus Christ, or not only priests are called by God to holiness, or the nuns like Saint Teresa, the Child Jesus, and the rest of the nuns. However, all of us are called to Him. It is a kind of vocation to be holy by responding to God's call with right dispositions, that is, with joy. O'Brien, whose text we will be using, comes from the Catholic University in Washington. Before, it's known for its keeping the tradition. However, recently it's not like that anymore. One of its professors, Hans Kohn, a biblical scholar, was called to Rome by the late Saint John Paul II. And after that, he was never heard of again. So, it's no longer as traditionalist as before. So, I mentioned in my introduction that I'm not saying that we should be very careful of her or of this book because of her background. However, we should accept her as giving us something from layperson, that laypersons can contribute or do this and like that, which could be even more credible than priests if it were not because of the sacraments or being ordained persons, because we got our authority and power from the church, from our ordination. Spirituality, as I said already in the introduction, is a broad term. I believe that nothing we do is not in one way or another related to spirituality. As Saint Paul said, everything we do is for God. Even how little these things could be. Saint Teresa of the Child Jesus, as I mentioned already, said that spirituality is a call to holiness. Kierkegaard has his development of spirituality, like all of us will pass through this spiritual development, as Kierkegaard said. By the way, Kierkegaard is a Protestant theologian, an existentialist, which seems to be an irony, because supposed to be an existentialist does not believe in God. However, Kierkegaard is a Protestant theologian. His main objection for us Catholics is that, or Christians, is that we are good only in learning theories but not in practice. So, remembering his stages of spirituality, Kierkegaard said something about the first development of spirituality is aesthetic. Second is moral. And the third is leap of faith in God. Aesthetic means one is being governed by the senses. We have 5 senses. So these senses, like for example our eyes, our hearing, feeling, would influence this particular development of spirituality, which is aesthetic. It's very material. Things we can observe, we can see, and for some, it is already a kind of spirituality. Nothing in relation with faith. It is an impulse and emotion, us being governed by the senses. And we can stay or be detained ourselves for years at this level. That is, reading, for example, beautiful books, and yet taking few or no steps to lead a spiritual life. So, maybe you, me, or some of you, or could be myself or others, your parents, are still in this particular spiritual development for Kierkegaard. Second development, spiritual development for Kierkegaard is moral. Many people are locked in this stage too. And there and many religious remain grim and judgmental. So you can be judgmental. You can say something, decide for others, which, if we analyze, would be sad, because you have to do something which could be disagreeable to others. So this stage is moral. If we say moral, of course, it is an act done by human being. Not yet, of course, morally good, morally bad. When it comes to morally good, morally bad, you have already your ultimate end, which is God. If you go away from the ultimate end, it becomes morally bad. If you go straight, it's morally good. So you can be a snooper or a spy, observing others to be able to judge. So for many, and even myself, I do not like to do this. However, we can always observe others and ourselves where we are. Where we are we still in the moral development, or we are going to the higher states, which is a leap of faith in God? A leap of faith is something higher than the previous two spiritual developments, aesthetic and moral, because there is now a move towards faith. Faith in God, God's promise that in the end there is a God who is good, a God who understands, a God who will save us in the end. God said, be perfect. Christ said, be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. We cannot be perfect because we are only human. But God told us so. We can be perfect if we want. And God is the one responsible for that. He is responsible. Do you think God will lie? Of course not. So, leap of faith is a leap of faith to do something for our spirituality, for our calling, even how I'm not saying really we did bad. However, we cannot really go that higher as high as God's standard, but He Himself will make us, will help us to the leap of faith to reach Him, God. So, God hopefully will take us beyond the moral, the aesthetic, the moral. One day we'll get the grace to take up our cross, follow Him, and to lose our life for His sake. So this become now a leap of faith as sacrificial love. It's charity. So it is a calling, all right. However, we all know that we are human beings. You must understand this. We are human beings. We cannot go straight to God. What I mean is that we cannot go to heaven on our own effort. We need the grace of God to do so. So, for many, spirituality is just working hard, doing acts of charity to reach God, to answer His call. But above all, we must think that it is God really helping us, making us worthy of Him through our good works. Because we cannot reach God on our own effort. It's Him who will take us to Him. We are only natural creatures. He is supernatural. We cannot reach Him unless He helps us. So it is always right that we should recourse to Him. And we all know that if it is God, there is always suffering. That is why Kierkegaard himself would say that his highest spiritual development is sacrificial. The same as that of Christ's sacrifice on the cross. The will of the Father. As Jeremiah, when he started, a prototype of Christ. At first, he had struggles, but in the end, he submitted himself to the will of God. And answered his call as what Christ did. I am not saying that he was sad in doing that, or Christ was sad in doing that. Or Saint Paul was sad when he was flogged. He had shipwrecks. He knew he would be killed, but he did not surrender. He kept on going until he died, his head cut off at the command of King Herod, influenced by the wife of his dead brother was being irked at Saint Paul, and influenced Herod to kill Paul. So there is always this suffering. There is this death. Maybe we will not die ourselves like Saint Paul or those martyrs, but we die to our ego. We die to ourselves in favor of fulfilling the will of God. This could be a good reflection of spirituality. While there's joy in doing all these things, hard things, not really easy, but what makes these things easy is that it's the will of God. We are doing it for Him through others, and we make ourselves alive by dying to ourselves. That is holiness. It's a call and answering to that call. We don't mind about anything. As Bishop Kamumot did not mind being robbed as long as it contributes to His holiness. We will end with this until our next meeting. We will have quiz of what I said. God bless you. Good morning.